So, good morning, brothers and sisters. Peace be to you. Today we have Pastor Jason to share with us. So, we will read Psalm 49. Even though it is Psalm, but the content and the message is very similar to Ecclesiastes and Proverbs. So, this is the Psalm of Wisdom. So the title is, arise, that we receive the understanding and the wisdom to conquer the death. So that's today we need to awaken to understanding. Otherwise, we will be like the beasts. In verse 20, a man who has riches without understanding is like the beasts that perish. So that's why today we need to ask God for help. Every one of us need to awake to understanding. And this Psalm of Wisdom is given to all. It's for all nations. So that's why in verse 1 it says that, hear this, all you peoples, listen, all who live in this world, both low and high, rich and poor alike. So if you are living in this world, then this Psalm is for you. So be it you are both low and high, rich and poor alike. So whether you are rich or not. So whether you are confirmed with Omicron, you still need to listen. So given that you are human living on this world, then you need to meditate this message. So in this pandemic, we witness a lot of death. So when we come to the memorial service, then we will try to think about the meaning of life. So of course, we can witness some people who can live up to 70 or 80 years old. So you can tell that they were young before and they were successful before. Or maybe they did even went through some difficulties and sufferings. But up to that moment, what do they leave behind? So where are they going afterwards, after the death? So this is the issue, overcoming death. This is the usual transcending death. So after death, so what do we leave behind? So this is the message that we need to ponder about in this psalm. So verse 1 to 4 is the introduction. So it tells us that every one of us should be listening to it. And then 5 to 9, it tells us that the money cannot save our souls. In verse 5, why should I fear when evil days come, when wicked deceivers surround me? It tells us the mental condition, that is fear. That is fear. We will be afraid. So we'll find that in this world there are a lot of disease, a lot of wickedness. So some people would like to fool you around. So the word, the deceivers, the wicked deceivers surround me. So it's a very special word. It tells us that some people would like to take advantage on you. So I still remember that when I came to Hong Kong, at the very beginning, so I went to the shopping mall to buy the battery. Because I found that if I purchase the battery, I will be given a small fan. So if I bought that battery, so I will be given this fan. So I was thinking that it's better for me to buy less batteries, right? Even though they were a little bit more expensive than the rest. But anyway, but it's good to have a free fan, right? Because at that time I was a bit plump, right? I was a bit fat at that time. So I thought that, well, it should be very nice to me because I was given a free fan. But anyway, when I opened the fan, when I tried to open the place of the battery, I would like to fit in the battery, and I found the batteries did not fit the fan. So I realized that. So if I really need to use this fan, actually I need to buy another types of batteries which would fit this fan. So I was fooled. I was deceived. I was being taken advantage of. So you see that? So sometimes somehow people like to deceive you. So you can tell that in this world there are lots of disease and wickedness. So what we are told might be the deceit. So what we are told might be only the one-sided story. Then we will find a problem. For example, the batteries, if you purchase the batteries, you will be given a free fan. Yeah. So superficially, it's good, it's right. Yes, you were given the free fan. But anyway, the batteries did not fit the fan. So it's a kind of deceit, right? Isn't it? So actually, a lot of wickedness, a lot of deceits surround you. So that's why when you go out, you cannot find yourself to be relaxed, because why you have a lot of fear on your mind. You are worried that you might be fooled, that you might be deceived. So how come there is so much wickedness? Because why? Because the people would like to take the advantage on you to get some benefits from you. So to be frank, a lot of people would like to cheat your money, would like to get your money. Why do they want to cheat you? Because why? Because they value the money. So that's why they will rack their brains to cheat your money. They thought money is very important. So that's why in verse 6, those who trust in their wealth and boast of their great riches. So here, to be clear, so there is no problem if you have a lot of wealth. Actually, wealth can be a blessing from God. But the problem is that if you trust in the wealth, then this is a problem. So it means that if you only trust in the wealth but not trust in God, then it is the sin. Because why? You just turn the wealth to be your idols. So they might think that the more money they have is better. So because the more wealth they have, they will have the false security. So they thought that the more money they have, that they have everything. But actually, what they have is only temporary. Verse 7, no man can redeem the life of another or give to God a ransom for him. So in other words, no matter how much wealth you have, you cannot save your soul. You cannot buy your soul. So even though you have a lot of wealth, you cannot stop people from rotting. Actually, for the rich man, for those who put their trust in the wealth, they need to understand that money has very limited value and functions, actually. So when I first received Christ a long time ago, the person shared with me that and taught me that. He shared with me the truth, and which was very good. And he said that if the issues could be solved by money, then this is only the small issues. It is very easy to fix. If you can use money to solve the problems, it is nothing. Okay, so it is quite easy. So I thought that when he was sharing that, I thought that he was very wealthy at that time. But nowadays, I really understand that for some difficulties which could not be solved by money, quite a lot of issues could not be solved by money. For example, the relationship issue. So do you think the money can really help you to reconcile your relationship with your spouse? Do you think that the money can really improve your relationship with your children? Can enhance your relationship with your children? I would say actually the more money you have, the more argument you will have. Actually, and also the money cannot save your souls, cannot redeem your souls. So that's why in verse 5 to 9, that money, wealth cannot purchase our souls, cannot redeem our souls. There is the limitation of value in money. So in our crucial stage, at our crucial moment, money cannot help us in whatsoever. So when we have made some mistakes, maybe when we have made some small mistakes, you might think that you can just give some money as the kind of compensation. But I tell you, if you commit the biggest sins, even though how much money you have, it cannot really help you, because the money cannot really help you. In verse 10, for all can see that wise men die. So here, he means refers to all people. All means all people. Because all the wise people will die, and even the foolish and the senseless will also perish. So do you see that this is a kind of taste of a book of Ecclesiastes? Actually, all men will die. And actually, when you die, and all your wealth will leave to somebody else. So that's why in verse 13 to 14, it tells us that the money cannot last. So I would say verse 11 is very meaningful to Hong Kong people. Verse 11, their tombs will remain their houses forever, their dwellings for endless generations, though they had named the lands after themselves. So I've read the survey about the graduates. Upon their graduation and they start working, so what is their ultimate wish for them? So that is actually all of them would say that they would like to get the properties as soon as possible. That means that they would like to purchase a flat as soon as possible. So this is the top wish of a lot of Hong Kong people. So if you can purchase the flats at the early age, then the people will praise you, saying that, wow, you are awesome. So it means that they really value their house, their flats. And they even name their properties, their lands after themselves. So actually, I haven't been to a lot of countries. But I really find that Hong Kong is the only place where the people like to name the places after their own names. For example, the hospital, the schools, okay, all their names are named after the people's names. So, for example, if you dedicate a whole building to the government or to someone, okay, and then the authority will name the building after your own names. It's the same for the hospital in Hong Kong. I really realized that is the way of Hong Kong people to do the charity work like this. So is it only the Hong Kong people who do the charity work like that? I don't think so, right? So it means that quite a lot of people really like to do the charity work with their names left behind. For example, they would like to name the buildings or the hospital with their parents' name just to honor them. But I tell you, all these things cannot last. Actually, it is very foolish if you dedicate our mind to all the money, to all the investment in all these material things. Actually, it is very foolish to do so. Well, if you say that if you cannot buy the property and you will be very painful, then I will say it is not worthwhile to think in that way. If you think that it's very painful that you cannot afford to buy a property for your every single child, you find that it's very painful, then I would say you are foolish. It is very foolish to think so, because all these things cannot endure, cannot last forever. Because I tell you, even though you have the more that you have left behind for your children, it might not be doing them good. So do you really want to leave them with a lot of wealth, or do you want to leave them with the ability to receive wealth? Actually, right now, in recent years, a lot of Taiwan people will say that they would like to leave the 90% of their money, of their inheritance for the charity. I really find that it's reasonable. Because why? Because the inheritance which you receive is not earned by your own efforts will really destroy your lives finally. So it tells us that wealth cannot last forever. In verse 13, this is the fate of those who trust in themselves and of their followers who approve their sayings. So in other words, the foolish people will value money a lot, will value the property, the flat, the house a lot. But even though they do it that way, and another group of the foolish people will admire them. And then, and the verse 14 to verse 15. The righteous man will endure, and the fool will go down into the grave. But the righteous man will rule over them. So in other words, the righteous man will triumph over them. The righteous man will be blessed by God. Because why? Because God will receive them. God will take them to himself. Because God will redeem them from the grave. So it means that God will save them. God will redeem them from the grave. So actually money will not last, and money cannot last, and money cannot buy us the soul, redeem our souls. But instead, the righteous men will be redeemed by God, and their souls will be redeemed by God. So their souls will be remembered by God. They can last forever. And then finally in verse 16 to 20, actually the wealth and honor cannot be taken away with you. So do not be overawed when a man grows rich, when the splendor of his house increase. So this is another kind of fear. So the first fear is that the other people will deceive your money. So maybe you might think that, well, since you are not very rich, so you might not be too worried about the money being deceived. But here in verse 16, it tells us that, so when we see the people growing very rich, we might be very feared as well. So I tell you that even the Bible has been written for thousands of years, the man's heart still stayed the same. So the men are always worried that you might be deceived, okay? And also you might be very afraid of the other people who get rich. So here we are told that we should not fear. So we should transcend this kind of fear. Because why I tell you, whoever dies, nobody can take their things away with them. And also they cannot take away their splendor either. They cannot take away their splendor when they died. So even though you might think that you are very honored, you are very blessed, but all these material things cannot be taken away with you when you die. A few years ago, I read an article about a person, Barfield, who is the very famous person who is very good at investing in stock markets. So I do believe that because of this pandemic, he is the only person who can really reap a lot of harvest and money throughout these difficult times, because he's very good at stock investments. So that's why he is the only one. He's the only one who can really earn a lot of money throughout this pandemic. So that's why the reporters interviewed him whether he has any things that he will have grave regrets. And then he said, I regretted divorcing with my wife. So can you see that? This person is very famous and is very wealthy. But in terms of his marriage life, he got a lot of regrets as well. So, and also quite some time ago, also Bill Gates also got divorced as well. So you might think that money can really, can be very powerful in all things. But I tell you, even the very basic and very fundamental issue, just like the marriage issue, it cannot be fixed with money. You might think that, well, he's very successful, he's very wealthy, but I tell you, finally one day when he dies, he cannot take away anything of such with him. So that's why in verse 20, a man who has riches without understanding is like the beasts that perish. So that's why we need to awaken to understanding. So we need to understand what we are after today is for today only or is for eternity. So if we spend our whole lives gaining something which is only temporary, it is not worthwhile. It is also very foolish to do so. So if we follow all these people to run in this direction, it is not worthwhile at all. So that's why we need to transcend this kind of foolishness. So we do not need to fear that when we see the other people getting rich. So we must have the wisdom which transcends death. So even though the other people get rich, it's much richer than us, we should not fear. So, and anyway, even though we are getting richer, we have nothing to boast of ourselves. Because why? Because wealth cannot last forever. And wealth can come, wealth will be past, wealth will be gone. So that's why it is not worthwhile for us to spend all our whole life on that. We have to use our life to win the eternity. So shall we continue to follow God?